Hello. I have another book. I've made another book. I didn't write this book. I found a lot of the little office books, like this little office book, which I've also printed in the past and done a little video about. In the introduction, it has a footnote saying Vide, which means see, Taunton's Little Office of Our Lady. So Taunton is Ethelred L. Taunton, who wrote a book called Little Office of Our Lady, which is a bit confusing because this is also called Little Office of Our Lady. But this Little Office of Our Lady is not the Little Office, it's a treatise about the Little Office. So I've put a treatise in the title so you can find it. So the Ethelred Taunton, this is an image from a book of hours, Use of Rome, from the Internet Archive by the Free Library of Philadelphia. There you go. So thank you to the Free Library of Philadelphia. Now, I have straightened out all the scans. I think you can see there's a little bit more space at the top than there is at the bottom. So I think that is the only thing I'm a bit concerned about, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. The size is good. There's a bit of space, so you can... I was a bit worried that it would be a bit close in there. So there's not very much space, but there's enough space that you can read the book. So what is this book about? This is a fantastic book. The contents, let's see. It's in 3 parts. First part is theoretical, practical, and exegetical. So, theoretical is why I should pray the Little Office, the nature of liturgical prayer, so this would be really good to have read before I did that video comparing the Rosary and the Little Office, because one of the big things I didn't cover there was how the Little Office is a liturgical prayer, which kind of sets it a huge way up above all the private devotionals like the Rosary. Even though, would you take the Rosary? Some people take the Rosary as being a divinely inspired or revealed by Our Lady, but it sort of had a development over time, and there's variations. So it's still classed as a private devotion. Rosary's down at private devotion level. Little Office is up at liturgical prayer level. I mean, it's not as fantastic as the Mass, because the Mass is the source and summit of our lives. Also, because we're lay folk, I'm a lay folk, you might not be a lay folk. But the religious are deputed to pray the liturgical prayers, so it's a bit more powerful if they're praying the liturgical prayers that they've signed up for. But we can still join in, and they're still really cool. So theoretical. Practical is about distractions. That's a bit on saying the office as the church wishes, and on recollection before beginning, intention, attention, and distractions. So practical, wonderful part 2. And then part 3 is the longest part. It's the exegetical part, where it goes through all the Psalms, line by line, explaining things that the church fathers, the old saints have said about each line of the Psalms, which is really awesome. So I should have prepared one in particular, but it has the Psalm in Latin and English there. This one's Quoniam tu Dominus altissimos super omnem terram, nimis exaltatus es super omnes Deos. So that's, for thou, O Lord, art most high above all the earth. Thou art exceedingly exalted above all gods. So this talks about what Saint Robert Bellarmine says about this. So it's just a paragraph, it's not too long. Some of them have longer explanations, especially when there's something confusing. The one I went to look up was about, where the sun will not burn you by day, nor the moon by night, which I thought was crazy. How many people get moonburn? Actually, come to think of it, I have people in my family with really fair skin, so I think they talk about as a hyperbola they could get sunburnt just by looking at the moon, because the sun's reflecting off the moon. Anyway, so it had a thing about the sun was our Lord, and the moon, which waxes and wanes, was the church. So I thought that was really cool, that, the church, even though she's the bride of Christ and everything, the sort of the holiness of the church, or the amount they correspond with Jesus, waxes and wanes over time. And then at the end there are appendices with a fairly detailed ceremonial. So you see a lot of these books, little office books, will have a little bit about the ceremonial, about how you say it as a group, who says what, who goes first, and things like that. And so it's actually the title of the ceremonial says it's a suggestion. So it's something a way of saying the little office which has worked for some religious communities. Yeah. So that is the summary of this book. Now, it's not the only book. I did want to compare it with this one, The Divine Office, which is a similar sort of book for the whole Divine Office, the Greater Office. And it goes through an explanation of the Psalms and Canticles, but it's a lot briefer. It gives the whole psalm all at once, and then comments on particular bits. It's just got a whole lot of footnotes to the psalms, so which is also really interesting. I didn't bring up the Dominican books, but there's a Dominican Little Office book which I'm very planning to go through online, and it's in two parts. One has the music, which is just all Latin with the music, and the other one is in Latin and English, just the text. Plus, so imagine the book. So on one side you have the Latin and English of the Little Office, and on the other side you have a commentary in one column. So 2 columns there, 1 column there, and it's a great book. And it also goes through the Psalms a bit more briefly. So the Dominican book is really good too. So there are, if you found the Praying the Little Office a little bit bewildering with some of the imagery in the Psalms, I think they're all fairly, like there's 33 Psalms in the Little Office, which is a nice number, and they're sort of the typical Psalms. They don't put in they haven't picked the difficult Psalms, but there's still some imagery. It's old, and it's great to see the symbolism behind different stuff. So the author recommends that the first part of the book everyone should read, and the last part, the exegetical part, is something to read at your time of Lectio Divina or study. So you can just read a little bit each time. It's not really a sit-down, read the whole thing cover to cover sort of book. It's more a reference book. Yeah, because if you're puzzled by moonburn or something like that, you can look it up. They're arranged according to the actual office. So you can just, look up whichever hour you're doing. So if you're just singing terce, then you can look up terce somewhere in here. Terce, the 3rd hour, and just read that chapter, and that will elucidate all the stuff that goes into terce. Yeah. There was... Oh, yes, I found the story. There's a beautiful story. Can I just read it out to you? You'll be all right if I read it out? Beautiful voices are God's gift and have to be used for him, and the music of God's worship should be of the very best. But loving hearts form a sweeter harmony before the throne than the rarest voices, if full of self-love. He sings well, says St. Bernard, who sings to God. Yeah, not to the camera, not to the microphone, to God. There is a beautiful story told in the annals of a certain monastery where the monks, all old men, sang as best their quavering, uncertain voices would let them. But once, when some high feast came round, they bethought themselves of getting the services of a skilful singer to chant the Magnificat in honour of the solemnity. And he came. His voice, wondrously beautiful, clear and pure and round in tone, like a flute, soared upwards and ringing around the vaulted roof of the old minster, enchanted the hearers. "Oh, would that we could have that fair singer with us every day," said the abbot to one of the ancients, who nodded his approval. But that night, as the abbot lay abed, lo, a great light, as of many suns, filled his cell, and in the midst thereof a vision of one stood before him. It was the Mother of God, Mary, ever blissful. "Why," said she, "have you on this high festival omitted my song, the Magnificat?" "Lady," said the abbot, "it was sung today, and in strains sweeter than we ever have heard before. For as we be but a handful of feeble croaking old men, with no music in our voices, we sought the rarest and most beautiful voice in the land to sing thy praise." "I heard it not," said the vision. "No sound came from the minster at evensong, and mine ears missed the music they are accustomed to hear daily from you and your brethren. That singer sang for himself and not for me, so his song could not rise to my throne, but fell back earthwards again." So this liturgical spirit, so necessary to be cultivated nowadays, is, when we look at it simply, only that of mere obedience to the church. It consists in doing the church's work in the church's way. There you go. So it's in the chapter on saying the office. So if you want to look that up. Yes, so the heart is what God wants and what Mary wants. There you go. So if that helps to reinforce that, don't worry how you sound. I mean, you can be concerned to try to help your voice sound as good as you can. But yeah, God sees the heart. Okay, does that give you a taste of how it's written too? That wasn't, he wasn't quoting another book. It's got that old-fashioned ring to it. It's from 1903. So does that make Victorian era? I think that's Victorian era. Yes, it was originally published by John Bale and Sons and Danielson and R&T Washburn. So it's an English book. Let's see. Okay, so where can you get this book? You can get this book from my bookshop, shop.ubil.us. I have submitted it for global distribution, so it may be available on other popular book websites around the world. But you can still get it from my book, and it will be printed if you get it from my place. Well, most of the places, it's a print-on-demand book, so it will probably be printed in or whatever centre is closest to you, so hopefully it won't take too long to arrive. Yeah. So, details, it's a paperback. It's 6 by 9 inches. I was, looking to make it smaller, but the footnotes are quite small. It's got a very small print for the footnotes. And so when I was testing out how big to print it, it looked like the 6 by 9 would be better. Yes. And I think it has worked out well. Yes. Oh, I have made it into an EPUB, so I will link to the EPUB somehow in the description. The EPUB is made from the automatic optical character recognition from the Internet Archive, and they do a fairly, a middling sort of job. And I haven't gone through. I started going through to put in the footnotes nicely because it has lots of footnotes. It also has a lot of italics, and I didn't notice the italics when I first put it together. So looking at the either getting the PDF from the Internet Archive or buying a copy of the book printed out, it would be good. Yeah. So I hope that helps with understanding Little Office. I just thought it's all in English, so English Spanish or Portuguese speakers, there must be other resources around. I'm at a disadvantage to find other resources in other languages because I don't speak other languages very well. Okay, so that is it for Little Office, a Treatise. The Treatise by Ethelred L. Taunton. And I didn't make any references to Star Wars. Oh, okay. Anyway, God bless. Bye. Deus naditorium meum intende.